Aljamain Sterling just found out that he's the champion of the world. Now, and I really have to tell you guys that. There was so many things that were impressive against Aljo. However, none of them made me believe in him more than the humility he had before the fight. It's very hard to reach your goal and stay motivated. Les Gutches, world champion 1997, baddest dude I've ever met in my life, told me the week after he won his world title was the most depressing week of his life. He didn't know what to do. Put everything into this one thing. Once he achieved it, he now no longer has a goal. He had never lived his life a single day without a goal, but he doesn't have a goal. He's already got it. Said it was very tough. I wanted to be able to relate to that. I wanted to know what Les meant, but didn't reach that level of success. But I remember when he told us a powerful statement. It was an interesting statement, wasn't it? And we see musical chairs at the top of divisions more than we do anywhere in the sport. Anywhere else in the sport, you don't see the same levels of upset. You don't see the number one contender going down as often as you see a champion going down, just by example. Why is that? Well, the basic and lazy argument is because within MMA, Bellator and the UFC, the best fight the best, nobody gets protected. That is for sure true. That is for sure a piece of it. I just think that there's more. And guys, I never even realized how quick belts were going around until Stipe Miocic set an industry-wide record with 2 title defenses. I remember hearing them go, well, that's a record? 2? 2? What in the world is a record at 2? But it was. He won the belt. He successfully defended it twice. It had never been done within the heavyweight division before. People were talking about Stipe in front of Fedor Emelianenko because of this sole record. So that's just when it stood out for me. So I remember standing going, boy, a lot of these champions don't win. So I started looking at Stipe. Why does Stipe keep winning? Why does Stipe have the record? I have deduced it on my own down to that damn fire department. I truly believe that. Stipe is not out living the life. He's not out traveling and doing the media. He's not getting distracted and pulled in different directions. He's grounded. He's got a schedule. He's got to be here. Well, if he has to be here at the fire department, and he is, that means he can get to the gym. That means he's got the same coaches. That means he's got the same schedule. That means he's got the same workout partners. If you want the same results, you got to do the same thing. It's one of those things, but I do contend that for Stipe, and I'm right to some degree. Of the pie, I just identified a piece of it. So I want to go back to Sterling, because Sterling was so hungry. He did not know he was the champion. He did not look at that as he was defending anything. He was out there to win it. And there's been some pushback on the performance, and it has surprised me. That fight was very clear 3-2. The 2 rounds that Jon won, regardless of what your lion eyes tell you, Sterling let him win. I don't mean that from an anti-sportsmanship standpoint. I am not looking to take away from Jon. I thought Jon looked great. It was a matchup problem. It was a blueprint problem. It was get a takedown and get an Aljo on top problem. It was a round problem. Right? It's a 10-9 must system. Aljo banks the first 3, and he's got to be pretty damn sure that now he actually talked, because that's a risky game. I'm going to go and give 2 rounds away. That's a risk. Ooh, you just put the deck against yourself. It ended up working out just fine. But Aljo spoke on why he was so sure he was ahead. And as a matter of fact, he not only believed he was ahead those 3 rounds going into 4 and 5, he thought he had 2 10-8 rounds. Now that's an extreme. Like, Aljo needs to learn something from this. Do not do that kind of math again. Because Aljo was wrong. That is not what the judges saw. One judge didn't even see the first 3 rounds. I mean, this was a slippery slope. Very slippery. But set that aside, I've been stunned that people are pushing back and don't think he won the fight. That's just not what I saw. I saw it exactly the way Aljo did. I didn't see the 10-8 business. The control was there for a 10-8, but not the damage. So I'm out on lunch on that one. But the first 3 versus the last 2. Now, a number of people have weighed in on this. And when you come down to judging, none of us fully know what that means. We don't fully know. We're given a very broad overview at the start of absolutely every event about the octagon control, about the damage. We hear these kinds of things, but each jurisdiction that you go in has its nuances that we just don't know. I'm not sure that we need to. I think the broad stroke is the most appropriate way to do it. First thing we're going to look for is damage. Then you get, right, you start bringing yourself backwards. Okay. Judging specifically is not overly subjective. However, it does have elements that are subjective. Here's an example. There are judges that have tried to do this from the beginning of time, which is get all the judges together and run a course. Here's what you were to look for. Here's what you're going to see. That makes a lot of sense. I don't think any of us push back on that until you think about it. We don't want one size fits all. If we wanted, there's one way to judge and there's one way to see this, we would just have one judge. What would the point of being three? And I will tell you, the point is to offer something different than the guy next to you did. If you are offering the same thing and all of the scores are the same, it would come back to why wouldn't we just have one? And why does he even need to be there? Why can't he watch it via satellite from an office somewhere, right? I mean, it starts to get to be one of these things. You have three judges to break a tiebreaker. You have it so that you have a conclusion. You have a 10-9 must system. You have what the judges are supposed to look for, but then they intrinsically, I've heard a lot of people say, judges should have to have been fighters. I've heard them say this about referees. Referees should have had to have been fighters. I just don't agree. I don't think that applies to the commission, to the fight doc, to absolutely anybody. I like a specialist. I don't want to see the fight doc jumping in the chair and judging fights every now and then. I can't imagine anybody knows more about fights than the fight doctor. I can't imagine anybody would be in a better position to assess damage than an actual doctor, but he's got a job. He's over here. Judges are to offer what it is they see, and by their interpretation of the rules, including the nuances, not just the ABC, the nuances within each jurisdiction. That's their job, and I don't think it should be one size fits all. And I share with you that I thought Aljo was very dominant. I thought that it was a glorious victory. I thought that it was very dangerous that he gave rounds away. However, I couldn't imagine being in his spot and letting Petr Yan have anything. Aljo was letting him have the back and just holding on to a wrist and protecting everything. Aljo wasn't open for a submission. He wasn't getting pounded with the free hand. He had a lot of control of the rounds that he flicked. I agree with that. I just think that some of you that are pushing back on Aljo are only remembering the last two rounds, which is very common. There was an organization called Pride where if you won the last parts of the fight, you could win the entire fight. It was just looked at very differently. In a 10-9 must system, you got 3-2. It's basic math as I see it. And I have been surprised on some of the pushback. And look, to get Yan back in there with Aljo, I think is very unlikely. I think the number one thing 135 pounds is looking for right now is parity. You're only going to ignore Sugar Sean and his beautiful record for so long. I think the immersion of Henry Cejudo coming back, I think, hey, where the hell is TJ Dillashaw? How's he feeling? Has never been more paramount because I think they're looking for somebody fresh at 135. That's the argument I'm making. You're not going to ignore the Rob Fonts and the Ricky Simones forever, but for today, I also don't think you're going to draw them into a title fight. Landscape changes quickly. I bring that to you because the idea of Yan versus Sterling, which I'm very light on, maybe that's not the most ridiculous idea. All we need is a precedence, which in all fairness, Max Holloway did start. Max Holloway will be the only guy to get a trilogy fight, a true third fight that did not split the outcome of the first two. But I don't know that I think that's wrong. You got Robert Whittaker as clearly the number one contender at 185 pounds, but he's not going to be fighting for the belt, right? Colby Covington is clearly the number one contender at 170 pounds, but he's not going to go and fight for the belt. Well, for how long? Eventually, we are going to have to tear this rule up that we've made anyway. And if people think that Yan won this fight and one judge did, and it was a closer fight than what I saw, you see where that dialogue needs to start opening up. You see where that dialogue might need to change. You see where it appears that Sterling and Yan are not done with each other. Now, Sterling's not done with Yan because you guys aren't letting him. All you got to do is tell him, good job, congratulations, champ, the end. But for some reason, people don't want to do that. And I will tell you, if that same fight happened, but rounds 4 and 5 were rounds 1 and 2, and then rounds 1, 2, and 3 happened, but they were rounds 3, 4, and 5. So the last thing that you saw was Sterling in those dominant positions, pounding this guy out for 15 minutes on the back end. We're not having this conversation. It's just a memory issue. It's just the way that you're viewing it. It's one of the reasons I don't like the idea of one judge. I don't like the idea of 5 judges. I don't like the concept that a judge had to have been a fighter before. A judge is there's some subjectiveness, and it's very limited. But if you have 3 judges so they can all offer something different, it's very helpful. I think you should keep that on mind. I think you should be a little bit nicer to Aljo. I think we should respect what happened here, and I also think that I'm right. I think it was just the order of the rounds, and if 1 through 3 ended up being the last 3 rounds, I don't think we're having this conversation.